Okay, well, it's top of the hour, and we're going to kick off our week one of what we're calling Synchro Office Hours. Thank you all for attending. Just a little bit of notes. The session's going to be about 55 minutes. We want to give people 5 minutes to get something to drink before your next meeting or be able to get out on time. The purpose of this really is to start a series of technical focused conversations with the Synchro user community to show off some best practices and really hope to generate what Synchro has long had in terms of user relationship between the product team and the user community. Everyone's mic is muted besides the presenters, so we'll be using the chat functions in Adobe Connect. So you see the chat window. Feel free to ask questions. That's what this is about. And if we cannot get all your questions answered, we will get back to you with them. The idea here is that we've got two of our technical consultants that I'll introduce in a moment. They're going to go through some really kind of some common synchro issues and some synchro best practices, and then we're going to just leave it for Q&A. And so they'll be able to read your chat questions and be able to answer them to the group verbally. We will be showing a little bit of product here, but mostly this is really an opportunity to get involved with the experts. So with that, just real quick, after the housekeeping, today's host, my name is Mark Hattersley, so I'm part of the Synchro operations team here at Bentley, and the important people on today's call, we've got Arpit and Sishi, who are two of our top technical consultants. These are the guys that make Synchro do wonderful things for us, so we'll be getting to them just as soon as possible. As I mentioned, we are really focusing on this series as a technical and process focus. We're showcasing best practices around sort of common everyday problems and situations. Please do use that chat function. And again, we're looking at 30 to 40 minutes of seeing Synchro and seeing some of these hand-picked situations that we want to go through, and then getting to the things that are on top of your mind. So before we get into this, I do want to just focus on one thing, right? Obviously, with disruption in the industry gone on globally, Bentley and the Synchro team, we want to do everything we can do to help minimize disruption to using Synchro and to make sure that you guys are successful if you're working remotely, if you're working from your home, or if you're working from another part of the job site. There's a series of web links in Adobe Connect in the session. This is published guidance on best practices. Have a look at those. There's a whole series of information around how to work with Synchro remotely, how to connect. Also, just to let people know, support tickets are prioritized for these working remotely problems. So if you do file a support ticket, either through the traditional support at Synchro or using the new Bentley support system, please go through and tag those in text as working remotely and working remote issues, and those will move to the top of the queue. They're critical for that. So with that, just a couple of things. Obviously, don't forget about Synchro's YouTube channels, Twitter, as well as the new Bentley webpage for Synchro. There's lots of great information on there. And wanting to handle one last piece of when we say Synchro, what we're talking about. So Synchro really at Bentley is our brand for construction. So what we're going to be talking about today lives up in Synchro 4D, and these are all the model-based heavy-duty workflows for things like model-based planning, model-based reporting, model-based analysis. 4D also includes some tools for doing things like quantity takeoffs and estimating. But in general, what we're going to be looking at today is really heavily focused on SYNCHRO Pro, which is a subset of this Synchro 4D universe. So with that, just a reminder, let's have some fun. Let's get through the chat windows, and I'll turn this over to Arpit now for you guys to be digging into it. So thank you very much.
All right, so the workflow I'm going to demonstrate here is going to take the model from, let's say, Revit file. I have this sample model open, the basic sample project which comes with Revit. I'm going to export this to Navisworks and then take it to Synchro. So I'm going to export it as a NWC format. and just put it somewhere. All right, so that's exported. In Naviswork, I'm going to open that model. Where's that? So this is a pretty common stage. Everybody knows about this one, how to get your models in Naviswork. So the second part comes in. We have to install this SYNCHRO plugin we have. You can get that from the Bentley software download website, and we'll put that link up if required. But once you have the add-on installed, you see this export add-ins over here. So I'm going to click on SYNCHRO plugin settings. So we got a bunch of settings over here, but the most important ones we would need is to make sure we have the export properties enabled. That one makes sure you get all the properties assigned to each of these elements come in as a user field within SYNCHRO. Um, the optimize for synchronization is for especially for Revit files. So this makes sure all the different Revit type properties can come in, not just the basic ones, but like all properties from Revit essentially. But the most important one we need to make sure is this one, the generate UIDs for new objects enabled. So what it does is, so if I click on this element, you see all these properties which came from Revit are assigned to these subcategories over here, like item, material, Revit, element ID. So you have all these properties here. So if I export this, I'm gonna say, okay, export to Synchro project. I'll just call it ordered SPX. All right, so export finished successfully. In order to synchronize from this file later, please save the file and make any updates to this file. So this is an important notification. And so I'll tell you what the difference is when you turn on that export the GUID thing. Now you can see there's another tab in the properties open up is a synchro ID. So this is what synchro uses to keep the objects synchronized within it. So every time you export, you want to make sure you can see these synchro ID assigned. So what this setting does is generate UIDs for new 3D objects. So if the object is the same, it's being changed or moved or properties edited within the original modeling software, Revit, it's gonna keep the same synchro ID. But if you have a new object ID, every time you export, the new object's IDs these synchro ID would be generated for those new object as well. So the next important part is once you have this synchro ID assigned to each object, you want to save this file. And that's another important step. So we are going to save this file as a NWF. So the difference between NWF and NWD would be the NWF is kind of a placeholder file, which caches all the models in. So all the models which are appended into the project are kind of referenced to it. So when you update a model, the link remains the same. All these synchro IDs are saved in the local NWF file set. With the NWD, those files are not at all referenced to the original model. So every time you create an NWD, that's a separate entity itself. So you want to make sure we save this as an NWF, and we keep using the same NWF file for every future updates. So I'm going to save this one as NWF file type. After every export, you want to make sure you save it. Right, we go back to Synchro. I'm assuming you all are familiar with, to some degree, with Synchro. So I'm going to import this file as a Synchro project file. So when we export from Naviswork, it exports an SPX file type, Synchro project export file. So we can import that from here. I'll keep all the settings at default for now. So if I click on those elements and go to the 3D properties user fields, you'll see all these properties come in. And at the end, you can see the synchro ID there. So doing these cross checks will ensure that you're using the same synchro ID and it's assigned to it's being synchronized to the same task. So let me real quick, I'll just make a resource tree out of this. And assign this all to the same task. So we're gonna check how the model update is gonna work, how it's gonna affect on this. So when it's assigned, all these resources are assigned to a task, you can move the focus time before. It won't display as it's not showing right now as per the task. While the task is happening, you can see it green based on the appearance profile install. After the task is done, you see the original colors. Now let's make some changes in our Revit file. I'll move a few elements. I'll change the size of the other few elements. And I'll make a few new objects. Right, some just random changes around. All right, I'll save this back as a, export this as a NWC again. I can override the original project. Let me close this out. So I've already saved this one. So I'm closing this Navis work. Let's see. All right, perfect. So if I reopen that Navis work file, you can see all the changes made to the file. Since it was referenced, it automatically refreshed. If it doesn't refresh, you can go and click on refresh. So if I click on this wall element, we move the wall from its original location to this one. We see that synchro ID is still assigned to that. And we can cross check with our synchro model. So this ID is ending with B9F. If I click on this one, check the user fields. All right, let's see. There we go. It's the same ID ending with B9F. But we created a new object. So this object, it doesn't have that synchro ID at all. Not even this one. So the new objects won't have the synchro ID. So now when you export, making sure you have the generate UIDs, you export the same. I'm going to overwrite my SPX. So all these new objects now have a synchro ID as well. So again, we want to make sure we save the changes so that all these new synchro IDs are saved for the objects. We'll save the file as an NWF file type. That's important. Go back to Synchro. Any model updates, any synchronization has to be done through Navigator, External Data tab. Right click on my model, synchronize from. I'll select the same SPX file. Default settings. Right, so we got the model in. Now if I move my focus time before the task starts, you can see the new objects were not assigned to anything and they're still floating around. They're not assigned to a task, but the model elements which had moved or changed its profile are still connected to the task. So that means our synchronization, all our relationship between the objects, the resource, and the task is being maintained. right? So by default, color mode you see is based on an appearance profile. So these appearance profile, if you go to assign resources, appearance profile, you have some of the default profiles: install, maintain, neutral, remove, temporary, and they all have their colors assigned to it. So when you move your focus time, you can see the appearance profile of each element. So for in this example, the green ones is demonstrating it's being installed. The yellow ones means it's being maintained. So you can control that. So that's the color appearance profile mode. If you go to 3D view properties in the general tab, there's this option where it says under dates and colors, color mode, appearance profiles. So we can change different color modes through here, or you can simply right click on the 3D view and go to color mode and change those here. So we got a few other appearance profile, few other color modes here. So the second one would be the resource status view. So this is when you're doing your resource statusing. The resource statusing would be so if I go to navigator and resource statuses, so we can set up these resource status criteria. So this one we just have in progress and concrete. What it does is if you assign a few resources, let's say, let me select something. For example, we are statusing our resources based on its actual progress monitoring on the site. I'm going to say, okay, these elements are in progress, right? Assign status on progress. So you can see those elements changing its color based on that particular status. So if I select this one and say, okay, these elements are complete, let's say. So you can use your focus time to see at what stage those elements were status, right? So that's your, this does not show the appearance profile at all. All the elements which have not been statused are showing the dark gray, and the ones which have a status have a color. An interesting setting you might want to know is how if we can change the color of these filtered non-status elements. So if you go to options, the file options, so options has this search bar over here, so I can search for status something, or I know where it is, so I can just go find it manually. So under default for new objects, resource statuses, there's an option where you can turn the transparency, change the color of the non-filtered items. So I'm going to make it, well, you can see it in real time. It's changing those colors here. So I can make it like a white with a transparency set. Right. So that's that for the resource status color. We got a 3D filter color mode. Let's see what that does. So that would be based on, as the name suggests, 3D filters. So let's say if I have a new 3D filter here and it says, okay, let's see. So I'm creating a filter based on my selection mode. So let's say all these elements are in my 3D filter. Then I can say, okay, make all these, the elements which are filtered using that element, a color. Right, so you can see that those objects which are part of the 3D filter showing the color which I defined here. I cannot see the rest of the elements, and that's again a very common question because we had the settings for unfiltered elements right here, but in the 2019 version, we change it to be visible under 3D view properties, filters, and you can see the list of filters applied over here. And the unfiltered object settings are over here. So I can say, okay, show me the visibility of that filter. So this is purely based on any parameter which assigned to my 3D filter and assign a color to it. You can see those colors over here. All right, let's see any other important color mode to use. Original color, well, it will show the color of the original model. So whatever the model color came in with the original 3D modeling software, it'll show that color. I think other part was based on resource suppliers. So right now, I don't think I have any resource suppliers assigned to it, but suppliers companies here. So let's say if this is a steel supply here and that's a concrete, right? I can assign each resource or even task or objects to its supplier. So I'll expand this one, and you can see the supplier are being shown for all the resources over here. So let's say all my steel parts. Okay, I need to check if I can apply the steel for all of them in a group. I'm not sure if I can do that. But essentially, if you have a color scheme set up for that supplier, we can see the colors for that. So, oh, it did change for everything. Perfect. So I'll go to my companies, and the color is white by default. If I change it to, let's say, red, so you can see those colors showing up. So all your, based on the supplier, you can see all those colors showing up. So similarly, if I had changed it for concrete, I could see the different colors based on suppliers. Um, I think that should be good enough for in terms of the color modes. The last one, we have a 3D table column. Actually, I will just show that as well. If I remember how to do that one, let's see. All right, so I can assign conditional formatting on my 3D table right now. So let's say if we had a better user field, we could have used that, or maybe I don't. But let's just use formatting for now. Anything which has, let's say, contains column. I'm honestly not 100% sure if this is how it works, but we'll figure it out. And CG, you can jump in and correct me if I'm being totally off the mark here. Probably not. So I had a conditional formatting, and I can do this for any column I have available, where I said, okay, all the elements which has column name in it should be shown green in the 3D object window, and that shows up the same color in the 3D view. So right now, in the version you see here, we just had options for the 3D table column. But as Mark said, we just released a new version, 2019.2, and you can download that from here. If you go to help, check for updates, it will take you to the page to download the new version. But that version, you can assign colors in the 3D view based on your resources, based on and based on task as well. But yes, now you should be able to access all the plugins, the Naviswork and the Revit plugins um, for 2020 versions online. So again, when I said to download the softwares, you can go to the Bentley website, softwaredownloads.bentley.com. Search for the brand Synchro, and you have all this new 2019.2 products out. Just a quick note on this, though, if you're using the Synchro Workgroup project, the SWP, if you're working on the cloud network, do not upgrade to any of these yet because we still have to release that the SWP for 2019.2. But if you're using a standalone product, you can have download for all this. You have plugins for Revit, Naviswork, MicroStation, and all the 2019 products here.
So I got a question about can we import Primavera? And the answer is yes. To import Primavera, we just need to export the schedule to XML file format, and then we can import the XML to Synchro by going to File Import and choose the P6.
Right, and that's an important point. So one, you want to make sure you export an XML from P6, and other, when you're importing it, I've seen a lot of user doing the mistake. They don't know where the XML is from because a Microsoft project can export an XML, so can Primavera. So you want to make sure under import, you select the right category for the right software you use. And then again, every updates you do in the XML. So let's, for example, I'll just import this one. I don't have P6 XML right now, but it's the same process. But let's see, if I import the schedule, just using default settings, any updates you make, you go to the external data tab, right click on that and synchronize from. It gives you a bunch of options over here for integrate, consolidate, synchronize, and I won't be talking about this here, but a good resource to check what those things do is using our synchro help. So you can just write synchronize option here. And even for Primavera, you have a lot of options which talks about a lot of documents here, which talks about how to work with Primavera, what, like the process, the workflow here. But like you can read these settings over here. So I clicked on, I search synchronize, synchronizing from Primavera, and it gives me all these, what these options do. It will talk about if you're working with multiple Primavera objects, any questions you have, you can first go through the help file. If that doesn't help, just reach out to us to the support. All right.
For IFC, usually we have typically two workflows. One is that we can import directly by going to File, Import, and choose IFC file. And another choice is that we import IFC files to Naviswork and export those models to an SPX file and then import to Synchro.
So one important thing regarding IFC workflow is it's a bit different from any other workflow if you're using SPX or a DWFX. So let's quickly export this model as an IFC over here. IFC4 and going to Synchro, File, Import IFC. Again, just leave everything default for now. Right, so I'm not sure why that roof didn't come in, but we'll figure that out later on. But if you look at, let's see, so traditionally your 3D object window would show the tree based on the original modeling software, but in IFC the tree is based on the resources directly. So just how Revit, so IFC has its own way of creating these tree, and you can define that in your IFC writing software. But this, you don't want to change this. Just like how we cannot edit the 3D object tree in any other file format, here this has a one-to-one relationship to any 3D objects. So you don't want to change the sequencing or the grouping of that resources. You want to use the same resources. What helps in this scenario is if you want to group objects into more sensible tree structure, you can use, let's see, under Windows, resource group. So you can create resource group based on whatever you want. So I selected the ceiling here, right click, resource group, create a resource group from selected. So you can have your own tree structure here if required, just sensible connections. Also, another important point I forgot to mention, traditionally the 3D objects will have all your user fields, but with IFC, it does not have any user fields on the 3D object properties. So if you see this blank, don't freak out. You can go to the resource properties for that 3D object, and you'll see those resource properties user fields in that area. So those two are the major differences with IFC versus any other format.
Well, great. Well, thank you everyone for attending CCR, but thank you so much for the presentation. Um, all attendees, please do look for answers to your check questions. This recording will be posted, and we're hoping, as I said, that we'll be creating a series out of this. So hopefully we've got our Adobe Connect bugs out of the way. And if you've got ideas for sessions and topics that you're interested in, we have a whole lot of topics in our mind related to the entire Synchro product family. But if you have ideas as well, please connect with us out on the social channels, LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. And we'll be happy to incorporate what you guys are looking for into these sessions in the future. Thanks, everyone. Stay safe and have a great day.